morning, everyone, and happy Saturday. My name is Callie, and this is another weekend of Clarinets, Cats, and Coffee. This weekend, per the request of one lucky patron, the featured orchestral excerpt of the day is from Scheherazade. And I should say excerpts because there are several tricky passages that are often featured on auditions. So if you're just now tuning in, the past few weeks I have been featuring different orchestral excerpts. I started out with instructions on how to prepare excerpts for an audition. Then last week I shared a video highlighting some of the major solos from Beethoven's Sixth. And this week we're going to do Scheherazade. Now, for those of you who don't know much about this piece, it's written by Rimsky-Korsakov, and it's a story about a tale of a woman who was married to a sultan, and he had a reputation of marrying women and then murdering them the next day. She didn't want to die, so she thought she would captivate his mind, and so for 1001 nights, she told him stories of adventures, and he decided she's all right, so he decided to keep her. So spoiler, that's what happens. It's a good ending. Anyway, so this beautiful work is tied together by little solos from the violin and the harp, kind of indicating Scheherazade, and then other woodwinds and different orchestral members come in with their solos and their parts in the story. So I'm going to start with the big one that is often on auditions, and that is the cadenza. And it makes its way through different members of the orchestra, and then the clarinet finally has its chance in the second movement here. And it looks really scary, and it sounds really scary. It sounds impressive, right? You heard me play it at the beginning. Anybody that hears this, it's always like, whoa, that's really wild. But if you are very methodical in how you prepare this, it's actually not that scary at all, and I promise, give it a try and you will find a pace that works well for you, okay? So first thing we have to talk about are dynamics. So we want to come in with a nice big full forte sound because it's just all this chaos and craziness happens and then boom, clarinet solo just takes over, okay? So you want to make sure those triplet quarter notes are very strong, right? When you're holding out these fermatas, there are 3 of them, okay? Each one should get progressively longer and softer. At least this is what I kind of imagine in my mind. Hopefully it sounded like that when I play it for you. Anyway, so you hold the fermata note out, start nice and strong, and then diminuendo, and then you play all the crazy stuff, okay? And the crazy stuff starts at piano and it gets progressively louder and faster until the very end of the line and you have a polka ritornado. So that's already in the music and everything. Once you hit the tempo measure at the end of the first 2 solo parts, you want to try to count off. Bum, bum, bum. And of course, that's going with the orchestral conductor in your mind. You may have to modify it depending on what your actual conductor for real is doing, but you have to have some sort of pulse in those measures so you kind of know where to place everything with what makes sense in the orchestra, okay? So that's it for the counted parts. Now, the tricky part we run into is really like how do we pace ourselves through all the noodly crazy bits. So the first one I actually count in 4 groups of 6. So 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, da 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 da. So I always slow down on the last 3. In the final one, there's a polka rit, and if you crescendo and slow down, it really gives it a lot of energy and power and intensity, right? So that's how I count the first one. The second one, I actually think about it. I count the high C's that I have. So I hold the note and so on the sixth C, that's whenever it slows down to that intense, slow rhythm. Okay, so I hope that made sense. And then the final one, I think the final one is also very similar to the first one. Count it in 8 groups of 6, and the final one, the final group, is where the rhythm gets a little tricky. So I'll sing it for you and then I'll break it down. So bum bum bum, hold it out for a long time and diminuendo. It's a lot easier to play it than to sing it, so I'm just going to play it for you. That last little bit in the 8th group of 6 notes, it's going to sound something like... And the next note is a marcato 8th note on the F sharp, I believe. Yeah, on the F sharp. So you want it to sound nice and big and powerful to start this whirlwind of an orchestral section after your solo. So. So that last one, just a little bit of a hold on that G. So da-dum. It can really sound like you're leading in, okay? So those are my tips for that first solo. The next one that you'll often see on auditions is in the 3rd movement, and it looks really scary, but it really sits quite nicely under the fingers. And so if you actually have a way of counting your way through it, it's really not that scary at all. So if you look through the measure, you've got 26 notes. And so I like to divide it into 3, 4, 4, 4, 5, 6. I do 6 at the end because we all want to rush at the end anyway, so we might as well write it in. So when I say groups of 3, 4, 4, 5, and 6, that means... So if you count it that way, then you can actually put it to the metronome. So I aim for around dotted quarter note equals 52. So that would be 1/56 to the 8th note on the metronome. The process of working it from very slow to this tempo that sounds all flowy and floaty and everything, it's going to take some time. So start slow with your metronome and don't be afraid to really put in the time and the slow practice on this. The second one, there are more notes in this. There are 36. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I have 6 groups of notes in here to account for all 6 8th notes of the measure. So we've got a group of 3, 5, 6, 6, 6, 6. Okay, so that would be nice and smooth and pretty. And again, practice it with your metronome. Don't be afraid to do it slowly for a long time before you put it to the metronome up to tempo, okay? And this is all just many hours of practice being put into it. But it is really fun to play, and you kind of get to pretend you're a harp going up and down. So that's one of my favorite things about that one. Okay, so the next one that's a little bit tricky is in the Graziose, which triple piano, pianissimo, staccato at the lowest end of the break, and sometimes going over the break. Ouch. So the only tip that I have for this is to tongue as lightly as you can. The most important thing here is air support, and the tongue is so light, it's more like your air is in charge. I mean, your air is always in charge, right? But the core air support is going to be much, much more in control of the note shape and the softness. So this is quite difficult. I normally end up feeling very sweaty when I'm done with this to get it to sound just right. And so it can always be softer. So it's a really cool effect if you can pull it off. But at the very least, it's a fun melody to play. And rhythmically, it sounds like it's in 3/4, even though it's in 6/8. Dun, dun, dee, da, dun, dee, dun, dee, da, dun, da, da, dee, da, da, dee, da, dee, da, da. So really make sure you emphasize those accents as they should be, just for that added effect of, are we in 6/8 or are we in 3/4? Listener doesn't know, but you do. The next one is the same thing, just a couple octaves higher. And luckily for us, this is a 2T passages with the winds. It still is piano, but not the excruciatingly difficult pianissimo. But if you think more like you're playing E flat, really high, keep that tongue position really high. I imagine that my air is just this cushion that's going along through the whole thing, and the notes just kind of pop out of this air support cushion that's going. And I also really like to make sure that my clarinet is really pressed against the top teeth so I'm not tempted to bite or clamp. The most important thing here is that the notes speak, they come out. So we don't want to have any kind of like grip or tightness. We want everything to come out sounding very easy and effortless, even though, it's very difficult to do, but also very satisfying and fun to play when you can do it. Now the last one I'm throwing in here for fun, just because it's fun. I think it's a lot harder on German system clarinets than it is for French system clarinets, but right hand pinky really gets a workout. I do most of it with my right hand pinky, except when I have to go from E flat to C sharp, then I utilize the left. The problem for us with a French system clarinet and doing this is not getting it up to speed, but really not rushing through it. So it is really fun to play. I highly recommend giving it a try and, give these dynamic whirls a try as well, going up and down as the line moves up and down and swirls all about. So it's a good time. All right, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Next week, I'm not sure which one I'm going to do next week yet, but if you have suggestions, leave them in the comments below. I've already done Beethoven 6, and over the past couple of years, I've done the Mendelssohn Scherzo, I've done Brahms 3, I've also done Capriccio Espagnol, although I haven't done the Cadenza from Capriccio, but we'll see. So I'm gonna look through my excerpts and see what I have, and if you have questions, leave them in the comments below. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful weekend, a good week next week, and as always, happy practicing.